then I see persons utilizing their razor and feature. Excellent. See, I see Patricia Clark using the razor and feature. Yes, that's the feature that you'll be using at the appropriate time when we have the question and answer segment. In that period of time, you will ask to raise your hand, and the co-host, the moderator,
You
Brother
come over here
Ravon,
when your time to speak.
I'm going to ask, I know Brother Kiddo is eager to speak, but I'm going to ask persons to please keep your mics muted until the appropriate time. Brother Ravon, good day to you, sir. How is things going on with you, my brother?
Well,
My
everything is
co-host.
good. Everything is good so far on my end. Well, it's been a good day. Just can't wait to hear the presenters and hear what will happen today. So I know that persons from all over the world and all over the Caribbean is here with us. And we plan to have a good time and plan to learn about this pandemic and how we as a church can cope with it and steps that we can take to become better and more knowledgeable of what's happening.
That's correct. This is a very important meeting, I believe, and we see it from the participation. Many persons have already logged on. I expect more persons to log in throughout the day. We have a good lineup of presenters, and at appropriate time, we'll have the introduction of these wonderful speakers who are professionals in the area, but the person doing the introduction will speak more about that. At this time, I'm going to ask persons to just bow with me as we go to God in prayer. After the prayer, we'll hand over to Brother Gladwin Kidu, who will be doing the introduction of our presenters. Once again, I say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you wherever you are in the world today. Thank you for joining this COVID-19 and the Church Zoom seminar. At this time, please bow with me as we go to God in prayer. Almighty God, we give you thanks for today. We give you thanks, oh God, that you have blessed us with the opportunity to come out in this forum to listen to things pertaining to the COVID-19 and how it will have an impact on the church. We pray, God, you will be with all the presenters that will present today. I ask, oh God, that you will be with them as they present, that the things that they present will be clear and precise, that we will be able to all come to a better understanding of this virus and how it can impact the church and what we can do to minimize any negativity that will come from this. We pray, God, for those who are sick, those who are in hospitals, those who are battling with the COVID-19 crisis, oh Father. I ask, oh God, that you be with essential workers, that, oh Father, your will be done as you watch over us in your capacity as Lord and Savior of us all. Continue, God, to bless us and forgive us for sins and our shortcomings. This I do ask. In Jesus Christ, I do pray. Amen. We now have Brother Gladwin Kidu at this time, who will now do the introduction of our presenters.
Good afternoon to everyone. And I may also have to be saying good evening to others because we may have people listening and viewing as far away as India today. Now, this is the second of hope will be a series of seminars to deal with the issue of COVID-19 and the medical aspects of it. This is not a theological discussion. We are not going to be discussing matters from that standpoint. What we're doing is bringing together a small group of Christian doctors who have been dealing with this matter on a practical basis, and to allow members of the church to hear what they have to say from that medical standpoint, and also to ask questions, and they will be able to answer. Now, at the top of the list is Dr. Alva Kidu, because she has been, of course, practicing for more than 40 years. She's a family physician. She's the chief medical director at Scotia Jamaica Insurance Company and has been thus for 25 years. She's a retired lecturer at the University of the West Indies Medical School, has been a member of the Church of Christ for over 47 years, and has been married to Gladwin Kidu for more than 47 years. And she is a faithful member of the Church of Christ at Mona So she comes with the credential of being both an experienced doctor and a faithful Christian. Then Dr. Jared Kidu is a graduate of Duke Medical School at Duke University in the United States. He's a board certified child and adolescent psychiatrist, marriage counselor, and he works at Kaiser Permanente in Atlanta, Georgia. He has been a member of the church and is still for more than 30 years, has been married for more than 14 years, is the father of 2 children, and has dealt with the psychiatric aspects of this COVID-19 pandemic and has seen patients in this regard. And then Dr. Everett Watson, he grew up in the Church of Christ in Patrick Gardens. He is a graduate of the University of the West Indies Medical School, has been a Christian for more than 25 years, serves as a medical practitioner at the St. Anne's Bay Hospital, is married, been practicing now for several years, and is the most experienced person in terms of the team because he has been seeing, treating, attending to COVID patients at the St. Anne's Bay Hospital ever since this pandemic started. And therefore he has hand-on knowledge of the impact of this pandemic in terms of patients and patients' care and the death of patients, etc. And so all three, hopefully, will be speaking. They're in various locations, but will be speaking. And then, most important, they'll be taking questions from the audience. And so I want to call on, I want to turn it over to the chairman once again, and he will call upon these presenters in the order that he so chooses.
Thank you very much, Brother Gladwin Kidu. Really appreciate that well-presented introduction. I'm going to ask Brother Engel, could you just please make annual youth camp? Brother Everett, could you confirm that that is the one that you would like to be a co-host, please? Brother Everett, could you confirm?
Yes, that's the account I want to be the co-host to make the presentation.
All right, so I'm going to ask my admin, Brother Engel, could you please turn annual youth camp into co-host? All right, while we're at that, we're going to thank everyone for joining us again today. At this time, we're going to hand over to our first presenter, who will be none other than Dr. Everett Watson, who will do the first presentation. As soon as, yes, Brother Everett, we are now ready for you. I see you're loaded and ready to go. And I'm sure that everyone will let me just get those persons on the outside, on the inside right away, because we don't want to miss anything that will be said today. Brother Watson, over to you, my brother.
Sorry, apologies. Sister Kidu will be the first speaker. All right, Sister Kidu will be the first speaker. My apologies. You're still muted, Sister Kidu.
Well, at this time, as we have just heard, Dr. Alva Kidu will be our first presenter. Dr. Kidu, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
Good to see you. Good to see you.
Likewise. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, members of the church and friends, wherever you are, hearing our voices. This is an important, we think, important discussion to have, because it won't be just a lecture. You'll have the chance to ask questions. Let me start by saying I'm grateful for the invitation, but let's get straight into it. Now, most countries in the Caribbean, right, have had this experience of this pandemic, and we are trying our best to cope with it. But there is so much negativity towards treatment, lack of understanding that this is really an excellent idea for all of us to open up. So thanks for the invitation. Now, in the history of our country, we know that a lot of people came from Africa, from the East and Europe, all over. But what has resulted is that many of us are subject to certain kinds of diseases that with the advent of the virus puts us at risk. Hypertension, diabetes, obesity, heart disease, and of course the smoking, whether it's ganja smoking, marijuana, or tobacco smoking, puts us at risk. And so individuals battle with how to deal with this pandemic. These diseases and the smoking condition, lifestyle condition, leads to reduced immunity and resistance, inability to resist certain germs. Now, with the spread of the virus, which as everybody knows started somewhere in China, the whole world is now afflicted with this plague. And we know how it is spread from person to person. Nose droplets, saliva droplets, touching surfaces, all of that will contribute to the spread of the condition. But in keeping your immunity strong, especially I would want to look at the older age group because we are all aware that this affects older folk more than young folk. I have a couple of points to make. The most important thing is to maintain a balanced diet. You know, we in the West Indies, we eat what we want. We like a lot of fried food and that kind of thing. We're gonna have to change that around to help with our immunity. We must exercise regularly. And as one who I'm not particularly fond of exercising, I'm not being a hypocrite. I know we must exercise. Drink 6 to 8 glasses of water per day. That can be difficult for some of us, but that will help us in our good health. And for those of us who actually, I'm talking to the older age group now first, who actually have to go to the clinics or doctors visits, if you're hypertensive, diabetic, whatever, try to continue the scheduling, because if you're without your medication, your immunity is going to go down. So you fill your prescription on a timely basis. So there's that medical aspect to boosting your immunity. And there's more to it, of course, with the vaccinations and so. But there's another aspect I just want to say a few words about, the social aspect. And as people in the church, we know that social gatherings are very important to mental health. Now, in some jurisdictions, you are not allowed to have more than 20 people at worship at any given time, etc. But we should still find ways to meet, whether online, but with the telephone. Keep in touch, especially, don't forget the older folks at a time like this. And what I'm going to suggest, personal devotions, and as older persons, myself being in the older age group, try to memorize scriptures. This is a good way to keep your day going strong. Now, many older folk, and I'm talking about myself, when you go out to the supermarket, it's so crowded. You have to be very careful what you do and who you do it with, where you stand, right? Because social distancing may not be observed in these places. But the supermarket is one thing. What I'm going to say, beware of who comes to your home. your grandchildren. Certainly we found that out in Europe. The grandchildren were the super spreaders to their grandparents. You come, you hug them up, you kiss them. And the grandchildren may not show any signs of a virus and pass it on to you. So keep socially distant as best you can. And wearing of the mask is what we have as a strong defense. And it has been found, I was reading, that if you double mask and the person talking to you wearing two masks, the chances of avoiding the pandemic, the germ, 94% avoidance. So think about that, not just wearing one mask. If you're going on a plane or some such confined area, wear two masks. No, we all know that this is a germ, right? COVID-19, it's a virus. And most people are puzzled about how a virus works, right? A virus is one of those, can be a good thing, but can be a bad thing. In this case, it's a very bad thing. Small creatures that invade the body and take over the body. And the thing about it, we all know that we have what we call DNA in the cells of our body. And the virus aims to go and attach itself to your DNA. And the DNA will manufacture the proteins that it wants. And those proteins are what affect us, right? So it's like, I liken it to an orchestra. So here's an orchestra with all the different instruments playing very well and having a good band leader. And then out of the blue comes this bad band leader who comes in and messes up the whole orchestra. So nonsensical music is being played. And that's what happens in your body. So your kidneys are affected, your lungs are affected. We know all those things are affected. Your heart, the blood itself can clot. Various things, your brain will be affected. So this is what the virus does to us. It's a strange kind of music that's being played by this new fellow that has come to the orchestra. So we have to do our best, very best, to stay far from this and to exercise wisdom, because there are a lot of things being said on the air. The friends are telling you all nonsensical, and Dr. Watson will go into that. But as Christians, we must listen and understand the truth. So these viruses, in particular the COVID-19, which is under discussion, causes death to your cells, and death to your cells mean death overall, the entire body, death. So with the COVID-19, we see it is here, and it is here to stay for quite some time. And in other countries, someone else will talk about this, not only the elderly are being affected, but even here in Jamaica, I don't know for the other countries in the Caribbean, but younger and younger age group, even babies are dying from it. So this thing is here to stay. So we need to take heed and do what the doctors and the experts tell us. So mask wearing, double masking, and vaccination, keeping your distance. These are the things that will matter, whether you stay alive or you go to an early grave. I will now at this joint hand over to Dr. Watson, who will tell you the medical aspect in depth, he being an experienced COVID doctor. Thank you very much. Hello.
Yes, hello. I'm just waiting until the screen is being shown. Can person see the screen? Can person see the screen? Can you acknowledge if you're seeing the screen, please?
No, it's just
Don't
blank.
start yet. It's still loading.
Okay, all right, just give me a few minutes.
Don't start yet. It's still loading.
Okay, all right, just give me a few minutes. All right, so for those who know, my name is Dr. Eric Watson. I'm a member of the Church of Christ. I say, Brother Kidu giving me some extra time. I've been a member of the church for 20 years. Grew up in the church. I've been a physician since 2017. I was graduated from the University of the West Indies and currently doing my master's, my postgraduate diploma in accident and emergency. As was shared previously, I am one of the COVID doctors at St. Anne's Bay Hospital. I see COVID patients. I treat and manage and admit COVID patients. And in some cases, if they require resuscitation, I would go ahead and do what is necessary. Just give me a few minutes, my computer is acting up. All right, my computer is acting up. Apologies.
All right, so while he is getting his device up and running, just remember to jot down your questions that you might need to ask at the end when you have our question and answer session, because our panelists, they will see how best they can address whatever concern, whatever question, whatever it might be that you need to get answer. They will see how best they can answer such questions. So just jot them down. Pay keen attention to what they're saying in their various presentations, because I didn't know that wearing 2 masks could increase the effectiveness of the prevention of catching the virus. So now I'll start wearing 2 masks instead of 1. So I'll definitely start
Sorry,
doing that.
could you make me a host, please, so I could share my screen?
Which one? The Everett Watson?
Annual Youth Retreat.
All right.
Yes, Brother Everett, I tell you, it was a very interesting presentation just far by Dr. Alva Kidu, really setting the tone for what's going to happen throughout today's proceedings, because we're getting some very interesting information right about now. The double mask is one, as you rightly said, Rayvon, the double mask and the efficiency that comes with it. And I'm sure that the audience will be writing down their questions, and I'm sure that when we have the question and answer segment, which comes up right after these medical doctors make the presentation, please take notes, write your questions down, and at the appropriate time, we will be taking your questions and we put them to the panelists who will be giving their medical opinions on these questions. We now see that Dr. Watson slide is now up and running. Dr. Watson, can you do a mic check that we know that you're here, sir?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay,
All right,
over
so
to you, my
quickly,
friend.
this is actually, I made this in May 16, 2021. I did a presentation in December of 2020, which is a part 1 of it. So we're just going to go quickly in the slides. And this is how we plan to discuss. We talk about COVID-19, quick overview, because Sister Kidu has done much in talking about it. An important thing to talk about is the immune response. We'll talk about vaccines and how they work, an important aspect of herd immunity as to why everyone needs to be vaccinated. We talk about the different COVID-19 vaccines, but we won't go in much detail, and some of the side effects, which also include some psychological impacts of the virus, some of which I will share based on my experience. All right, so what is coronavirus? So coronavirus is actually a family of viruses. There are 26 different subgenera and 46 different species of the virus. The virus is what we call an obligate intracellular organism. And just to break it down, there are 46 different species, and it requires a host or it requires what you know as a person or a living organism in order to survive. COVID-19, because of its large family, has actually been around before 2019. So the last time we saw COVID was the Middle East Respiratory Syndrome called MERS back in 2016. And it was believed to be originated with bats similarly. And it affected countries mostly in Saudi Arabia. So we never heard much of it on the news because it never come all the way to the western side of the world. We also saw SARS back in 2002 and 2014, lasted about 2 years. And this is where the movie Contagion comes from. It originated in China as well. and it affected mostly the eastern side of the world, and hence the reason why we never heard much about it. But it actually impacted a number of countries. Up to 16 countries were involved, and it lasted 2 years. And from then they started developing a vaccine for SARS-CoV. And so we've seen the footprints of COVID prior to 2019. So what is COVID-19? It is a respiratory illness caused by the coronavirus that started in Wuhan, China in November 2019 and became a worldwide pandemic in March 11, 2020. And similar to the other viruses or other members in the family, the host is humans, birds, and bats. And we've seen as well camels and other animals. It is believed to originate in Wuhan and became a widespread or international issue or pandemic simply because of the environment of Wuhan. Wuhan has what is known as the wet market. And because of this, the droplets will fall on food products, etc. And persons will ingest these and then develop these respiratory illnesses. Just to point out something that's very important, and Dr. Kidu pointed out on this previously, is the level of contagion of an illness. The level of contagion look on the likelihood of spread or the degree of spread if someone is positive. Well, as you can see, there are a number of illnesses placed here, but I really want to focus on COVID-19. If you are positive and you cough in a space where persons are unmasked, the probability of you spreading it, the likelihood of you spreading it, at the level at which you spread it, is spread to at least 2 to 2.5 persons. And this is consistent with data we see internationally and even here in Jamaica. So now we talk about the immune response. What exactly is this immune response? And this is the crux of which we develop vaccines and why persons require vaccines. Now, when a foreign product enters the body, such as the COVID-19, the coronavirus, the body has its own way of recognizing and defending itself against these foreign products that Dr. Kidu spoke about. And the way in which the body recognizes and defends itself is what is called the immune response. Now, these foreign products are what you call antigen, that's the name we call them. And the immune fighters are the soldiers in which the body develop. The immune response have several layers of response. So you might have different systems that the body uses to fight off or fend off against these illnesses, and we'll talk about some of them. All right, so there are different immune responses. There are actually up to 4, some textbook will show, but we'll talk about 2. You have the innate response or the built-in defense system. As you know, your body has different type of blood cells, red cells, white cells, etc. These white cells can actually kill these different elements, these antigens. You also have stop points in the body called lymph nodes, or one called on wax and cannon. What these areas are specialized areas that can capture antigen and kill them. Then you have the adaptive or the acquired response. This is actually a delayed response. So when something enters the body that is unknown to the body creates this reaction that allows it to kill the pathogen or kill the foreign body and create a memory cell so that if the pathogen come back again, it can respond faster and get rid of it faster. All right, that is the adaptive response. And that is what we call a learned response. And that is the arm that we're trying to trigger when we give persons the vaccine. There's also a thing called passive immunity, and we see it among mothers who breastfeed the babies. When they breastfeed the babies, they give them antibodies so they can fight against diseases. All right. So how does vaccine work, and what exactly is a vaccine? So a vaccine is really a biological preparation that has parts of the pathogen, right? So we give either the outer cell of the pathogen, the RNA section of the pathogen, we give you a piece of the outer membrane, or we can give it even a killed form or a weakened form of the virus or the pathogen that we want. And what we want to do is to trigger the adaptive arm of the immune system. And when we trigger the adaptive arm, what happens? The body has this immune response, and then it creates a memory cell. And when it creates this memory cell, the next time, or should you get the actual pathogen, the body then responds quickly so that the pathogen does not destroy your cells or affect tissues. All right, so the aim of it is to reduce tissue damage. The reason why we give vaccines, to cause the adaptive arm of the immune response to be triggered. All right. So the aim, what is the aim of vaccination? So yes, we wanted to have this immune response. So we give you a piece of the COVID virus so that when it introduced into the body recognizes that, all right, this is something that is foreign, it kill it and create a memory cell. So if you actually get COVID, what it does is reduce the likelihood of tissue damage. Remember, pathogens, their aim, as Dr. Kinney rightly stated, is to destroy tissues. And the more tissue they destroy, the more likely, the closer they get closer to death. And if the body don't respond, the body's immune system will ultimately break down, you'll be overwhelmed by the virus, and you can die. When you give it the vaccine, or we give a piece of the virus, that the body trigger this immune response, and of course it will kill the biological agent that we introduce. But what happens is that we create this memory cell so that if the actual virus comes, the response is triggered quickly so that it decreases tissue damage. So that is vaccination. But why we vaccinate is acquire something called herd immunity. Now, what happens is that when a large portion, of the community is immune to the disease, meaning that when a large portion of the community is at a point where should the disease actually come among the community, there will not be an outbreak, we have something called herd immunity, right? And our aim is to acquire herd immunity. That is why smallpox don't happen in Jamaica. More than 80% of our population is vaccinated. So because more than 80% of our population is vaccinated, the 20% that unvaccinated is actually protected. And even those among the 80% is actually protected as well. So if one person gets smallpox, there's no outbreak in Jamaica. Back in 2019, there was a small outbreak of the smallpox in the United States among unvaccinated persons. You know, America, sometimes they give persons the option to choose whether or not they're vaccinated. Vaccination is mandatory in Jamaica, so we actually have a regime against smallpox, right? So there was an outbreak, and the outbreak happened because there was a breakdown in herd immunity. So that is why we vaccinate. We want as many persons vaccinated so that if there's an outbreak in the community, if a person in the community has the illness, there is no outbreak in the country. So that's the main reason why we vaccinate, right? And so there are different types of vaccine. There are currently several worldwide. There are some that are popular. We know with the AstraZeneca, we know the Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, and the Moderna, and they all operate in a similar fashion. And what I mean by that is they all trigger the adaptive arm of immunity. However, how they do that or the method in which they do it might be slightly different than some. As a result of that, different things are different about the different vaccines. So the effectiveness might be different. The temperature in which it's stored because of the biological agent that they use might be different as well. All right. So what you will also find is that some of the vaccine have coverage for specific variants of COVID, right? You will see that there is the UK variant, the Brazil variant, the California variant, the African variant. So there are several variants of COVID that exist. And in each of these countries, you might find that some of these vaccines are more effective against specific variants. So I'm not going to dwell on it, but Pfizer has created, now FDA approved. It was initially in November of 2020. It was given an emergency authorization, but it's now FDA approved to be given, right? It demonstrates a 95% efficacy. It's stored at a much lower storage. This is why in Jamaica and some of the Caribbean countries, we didn't have the facility for storage. This is why we never got Pfizer first. Of course, it is also expensive and it's a 2-dose vaccine. If you realize it's 21 days apart, but depending on how some countries are with regards to storage or how some countries are as regards to the obtaining it, it might be longer, but the time to give it is within 21 days. Moderna is also a 2-dose mRNA vaccine, and it was authorized by FDA, about 95% effective. Somebody's mic is on. My apologies. Somebody's mic is on, and it's causing some issues. Wonderful. All right. So it's about 94.5% effective, and the efficacy looks on the probability of it mounting an immune response. Right? So I say 95% effective, 66%, 88% effective. I mean, if 100 people get the vaccine, 88 persons of the 100 will actually mount an immune response. So that's what we call about the efficacy, right? If you look as well, it's also effective against the UK variant, South Africa variant, Latin American variant. But one of the things that I need to point out is that there is this thing called trans coverage. And what trans coverage means is that even though you're vaccinated, for example, with the AstraZeneca, which is effective against the UK, as well as the outbreak that occurred in India, even though it is effective against those, it's actually effective against all strain of the COVID-19 virus. So there's trans coverage. And the AstraZeneca, which was very popular in Jamaica, that was popularly given, is about 90% effective. We saw initially it was 66, it went up to about 85% efficacy. And as time goes on, I realized that the efficacy might vary from country to country, right? Its storage is around room temperature or close to room temperature. And as I said, there are some studies that show, and I will talk about this, presence of clots being present with AstraZeneca, where there's some hesitancy with it. And some, as you see in here, 222 suspected blood clot cases, which is why there's initial hesitancy with it. But this is actually small in comparison to the worldwide data, right? And so it's very important that I talk about some of these things as well. And it will later talk about some of the persons who are less likely to be recipients of some of these vaccines. The Johnson & Johnson is a single dose shot. It's 66% effective. And in some cases, again, I talk about this because persons ask these questions. There were some bleeding. There were some cases, rare and severe cases, where there was clots being seen or where there are cases of bleeding, right? And so these do exist, but it's not the majority of cases, right? It's a single dose, 66% effective. So what are some of the side effects should you decide to take the COVID-19 vaccine? So you might have pain at the site of the injection, you might have swelling, tiredness, headache, nausea, chills, muscle pain, and fever. And these are part of the body mounting this immune response, right? So you might have these. Again, there are very rare cases where persons might have clots, persons might have bleeding, but these are very rare, all right? There are not a lot of cases. As I say, internationally, when the data is studied, the percentage of persons with these particular illness are in small quantities. Of note as well, some of these persons have predisposition to having clots or bleeding, and these now go into a contraindication for some of these particular illness, right? But the goal of this is to encourage everyone to get vaccinated. We want to acquire herd immunity. We want to reach to a point where the community is protected and there's no outbreak of COVID-19, all right? I'm fully vaccinated. I'm a physician, I work in the field. I don't think any government would want their doctors to be sick if it's going to cause you to drop down and die. All right, so I'm fully vaccinated. And my encouragement to you is that everyone should be vaccinated as well. All right. Before we jump into the questions, I had some other statements I want to make. And it's some of the side effects or psychological issues that I see happening because of COVID-19, right? So I know internationally, it is said that if you get COVID-19, a 99% chance of you getting a 99% chance of being recovered, all right? That is not true. The percentage is still high, but a little bit low. 97 to 98% of person will quote unquote recover. And I put it in quotes because a lot of people say recovered mean that they're not dead, but not dead does not mean that you have recovered. There are some issues that occur because persons have actually had COVID-19. And these are some of the things I see coming to the hospital. I see people presenting with depression, and that Dr. Kidu will step into your discussion soon. People come with psychotic effect, people that throw bleach on themselves or drink bleach, all kind of things are happening, right? We see people as well coming with renal and heart failure, lung problem. These are people who are set to quote unquote recover. Lung problem. There's also erectile dysfunction. We see people presenting with clots. And this is what we call the sequelae of COVID-19. So you might say, okay, 97% of persons recovered, but they're actually, since of May 29, 2021, we're still analyzing the long-term effect of actually getting COVID. So if you get COVID, there are some sequelae that can happen. You might have long-term lung problem that will be ongoing. You might have heart failure, and I've seen it in young people. You might have kidney failure, seen it in young people as well. Persons may present week after with clots in their lung. And we had one of our church brothers who died from a clot in the lung. He was on the short end. He was unvaccinated, and he later on, even though he had COVID-19 previously, later on developed clots in the lung and died from that. I know in the previous discussion, I said we're waiting on his PCR. His PCR came back positive for COVID-19. Also, just quickly, just passing over some of this information.
Brother Watson, you're muted.
Or while waiting Brother Watson to get his audio sorted out, Brother Watson, are you there? We are not hearing you. Brother Raven, as we get ourselves prepared for the question and answer, I know we have another presenter coming up. That will be Dr. Kidu, will be also speaking from the psychological point of view. But I'm sure Dr. Watson has a lot more to share with us.
Sorry.
I see him back here.
Sorry about that. Hello.
Not
Yes.
a problem, Dr. Watson. Go right ahead.
I muted and was unable to unmute. All right. Right. So I'll just hand over to Brother Kidu at this time. And what I will do is in the question and answer, when the opportunity to present themselves, I'll answer particular questions regarding some of the things that I mentioned. All right. I hope the presentation was helpful. So please go ahead and we can go to our next presenter.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Kidu, there's a delay, so please go to the question and answer at this time. Jared Kidu. He's delayed, there's a problem, so please go to the question and answer.
We're going to hand over to my co-host, Brother Raven Buckler, as well as Brother Desroy Reed. They will be moderating the question and answer segment. We see persons already putting up their hands. Thank you very much for raising your hands as I hand over to my co-host. Please keep your mics muted during this segment unless you have raised your hand and have been acknowledged. After being acknowledged by the moderators, you can go ahead and make your question. So please utilize the raise your hand feature. If you have any challenges, raise your hand. You can also use the chat. Please you can put your questions in the chat. We will be monitoring the chat as well for questions. If you can't raise your hand, utilize the chat for feature as well. We now hand over to, let me start with Brother Desra. Brother Desra, are you here, sir? Brother Reed, can I get a feedback from my Brother Reed? All right, while waiting, Brother Reed, we can ask persons to raise your hands, keep your mics muted. Brother Raven, the floor is all yours.
All right, so the first person who had their hand up was Sasha White. So Sasha White, you may go and unmute your mic and ask your question.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Okay, my question is kind of lengthy, but just bear with me. So from what I'm understanding, that COVID, the virus, is similar to the flu. We grew up using external remedies and like clean and clear nutritional diets to overcome the flu. So one of my questions is why we need a vaccine to get rid of COVID? And the other part of my question is if the vaccine doesn't prevent the outbreak of COVID because it continues with various variants. So we're gonna have to get a vaccine for each variant.
All right, so who from our panel would like to answer that question?
If Sister Kidu doesn't mind, I can go ahead, if that's fine. All right. All right, let me go ahead. All right, so the first question she asked if it's similar to influenza. All right, so I want you to understand something, that influenza actually has a very high mortality rate. And so we still encourage persons to take the influenza vaccine. However, COVID-19 is a little bit different. COVID-19, what we found, actually not just affect the respiratory area, but is highly contagious, right? If you look on the previous presentation, the presentation I actually have, let me just go on it really quickly, screen share. Let's go on the slide. All right, let me just share this real quickly. I want you to look on this slide for a second. Oops, sorry. All right, you say it's similar to influenza. It's not. The rate of infectivity of COVID is much higher. COVID-19 affects two to three persons. Influenza affects 1 to 1 person, right? The other thing about SARS-CoV is that the level of mortality between persons is in a short term, in terms of a short period, is actually much higher than that of influenza. Another thing to note as well is that influenza, in most cases, tend to not have adverse effect as we see in COVID-19, especially among those with already comorbidities, right? So it is not, it does affect the airway, but COVID-19 actually has a long-lasting effect, particularly in the pulmonary, renal, hepatic, and cardiac system than we see in influenza. Influenza tends to just occur in the respiratory system, and the majority of cases are actually mild, right? So majority of cases is mild, but there are those persons who might have severe adverse reaction to having influenza disease. So COVID is not like influenza. COVID is actually worse than influenza, all right? The second question you ask is, if when we had influenza, we utilized external remedies to treat influenza, why can't we use external remedies to treat COVID? We do try to use external remedies to treat COVID, but here's the thing about it. I mentioned to you that you had MERS, you had SARS, I would try to develop vaccine for it. A virus, as I said, is an obligate intracellular organism. How we treat viruses? We don't treat viruses by giving antibiotics. We only give antibiotics to bacterial infection. COVID is a viral infection. We don't give antibiotics for that. What we do for influenza is give symptomatic treatment. So if you have runny nose, we give something for the runny nose. If you have a cough, we give something for the cough, but we don't treat influenza. We treat the symptoms of influenza. And similar, that's what we do for COVID-19. Now, here the thing is, when I have symptoms of COVID-19, it can be very severe. And as a physician, we're at the point now where we actually have to choose who we give oxygen to in the emergency room. You don't have that one of influenza outbreak, but we have that during a COVID outbreak right now. The third thing you ask is, you're making an assumption that if we use treatment for it, why we need a vaccine? Again, we do not treat viruses, we treat bacterial infection. COVID is a virus. We do not treat viruses, we treat the symptoms of the virus. So then, why we need the vaccines? We need the vaccines to acquire herd immunity. The next question you ask is, do we need immunization for all these strains? I mentioned that once you are vaccinated, you have cross coverage. All right, you have cross coverage. Important to note, and I don't know, most of you won't remember this, and since I work in medical field, I have to deal with this all the time. A lot of you ask if, why if you take 2-3 vaccine down the road? Even if you take 2-3 vaccine, yes. When you were 6 months, 6 weeks old, you took the pentavalent vaccine. When you were 3 months old, you took a second dose of the pentavalent. When you're 6 months old, you took another dose of the pentavalent. And guess what? When you're 1 year and you're 18 months, you took another dose of the pentavalent. A part of it is polio, a part of it is influenza. And every year you're required to take the influenza vaccine. So you're telling me that since I born till now, I still have to take influenza, I still have to take influenza vaccine? Yes. From birth till now, from your 3 weeks, 6 weeks old? Yes. So why are we not complaining that we're taking influenza vaccine 6 weeks, 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 18 months, and every year from that until I'm in my 60s. I have to take the influenza vaccine. But no, because COVID is the new kid on the block, we complain that we've taken the doses 2 or 3 times. One of the reasons for that is you mentioned if we have to take one for each variant. I know I answered a lot of questions here, but she asked a lengthy question, so I'm going to give a number of answers. As a virus, viruses communicate. And one of the reasons why you have to take the influenza vaccine every year is because viruses know how to change their RNA component. So when they change the RNA component, it makes last year's vaccine ineffective. So last year we took an influenza vaccine in 2020. In 2021, we have to take a new influenza vaccine. I don't know if you guys remember, swine flu is an influenza. When swine flu came out, that's must say H3N1. So you can have H up to 11 and N up to I think 16. So you can have H1, N12, H3, N4, H5, N7. So influenza is a very big family. Remember that there are 46 different species. The good thing about COVID, though, as I said, it's a new kid on the block. And the good thing about it is that once you are fully vaccinated, you can have cross coverage. Now, the thing is, if next year then come and say you're going to need another vaccine, should you take it to acquire herd immunity? Yes, you should. All right? You can go ahead with the next question.
Dr. Kidu has, Dr. Alva Kidu has an input to what you just said, brother.
Yes.
All right ahead, Dr. Kidu.
Right. I was looking at something here. Annually, in the past 10 years in America, about 50,000, some years more, persons died of the influenza virus. In the time since COVID started in America now, North America, is 61,000 persons, 600 and plus thousand persons have died during that period of time. So we have to compare apples with apples, okay? And the other thing I like to say though, in around 1914 or thereabouts, we had the Spanish flu that killed near 60 million people. So the flu, certain types of flu can be deadly, but now in our setting, the coronavirus is deadlier than the flu.
Very important point there. Sorry, Sister Kid, if I could elaborate. She mentioned why about the mortality. In the US alone, up to date, we have 674,000 persons who have died from COVID-19, 42 million infected. In Jamaica, we have 79,000 infected cases, 1,783 persons die, right? Again, COVID has passed the number of murders we have in 2 years in Jamaica alone. I want you to mention the #1 killer in Jamaica is actually hypertension, diabetes, but the things that we see popping up acutely, murders, we see death from motor vehicle accident. COVID has surpassed all of that in Jamaica alone. I just wanted to consider that.
And we don't have a vaccine for that.
All right, I'm going to just, before I hand over back to my co-host, just want to do a quick housekeeping. Okay, we're going to ask persons in the interest of time that we keep our questions as concise as possible. All right, that was a very lengthy one, and we appreciate all the information. So we're going to ask, and I must apologize to Brother Mark, P City, and Brother Dunbar. Thank you for your patience. So we don't want persons to be waiting excessively long in the queue. So we're gonna ask persons to just use your discretion with your questions going forward. I know Andover, I won't interject anymore. Go over to my co-host.
Remember, we're also alternating between the chat and the hand raising so as to not have any discrimination.
All right. So the first question from the chat is from Marie Murphy. It says that if you take the first dose of the Pfizer a couple weeks ago and you were supposed to get the second dose, but you were delayed, what should you do?
All right, I can answer that question if Dr. Kidu will.
Go ahead, Dr. Watson.
All right, so remember, it's what we call the ideal time. So 21 days is really the ideal time, but you can go up to 6 weeks or more. We say up to 9 weeks in some cases, where you can have coverage regardless of whether or not regardless of not taking the vaccine in that period. So even if you're delayed by 3 weeks, it's fine. All right, so you can go up to 6 weeks. Some studies show up to 12 weeks, but we try not to pass the 9-week period. All right, so if you took the Pfizer vaccine and you have to wait another time for it, that is fine. All right.
All right, good. All right, next person, Mark King. Your hand is up, so you may go, Mr. King.
Thank you very much. Is that Brother Butler?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. I heard Andre earlier, and it is so unfortunate that his caution came in, because I happen to wear many hats, not only within the judicial system, but also on the political stage as well. So I have about 5 questions, but I now have to now choose how much of the 5 I really ask. And these are because these are questions that have been asked of me. And sometimes, the more persons we have to disseminate the responses, it can be quite helpful. But nonetheless, I'll begin. First of all, I want to declare that I'm fully vaccinated. And, I think I heard Dr. Watson declare that. I'm not sure if my mom on the other side, Dr. Alva Kidu, had declared that, but it would be good if the speakers all can declare that they are fully vaccinated. But as I say, I'm not sure, but if I had missed it, then no, with my first.
Yeah, Dr. Kidu has been vaccinated, both of them.
Okay.
Even my 98-year-old mother, so you see.
Right, that kind of helps send the right message. In relation to the double masking, which Dr. Alva spoke about, does this apply to someone who's fully vaccinated? That's question number 1. Question number 2, I happen to be the recipient of not only the COVID vaccine, but on a yearly basis, I do take my flu shots, my pneumonia shots, right? Many persons may not know that there's a pneumonia yearly shots. And I want to find out in relation to the COVID vaccine, it has not yet been said, but will it become a yearly thing for ordinary persons to take, just like the flu shot, the pneumonia shot, etc.?
Time will tell. Time will tell. That's all we can say. We are not prophets here, Brother King. And this has only been around here, COVID-19, since last year, or the December of 2019. So let's pray about it, because we can't go through this for year after year after year in the same way, but only time will tell. We don't know.
Now we know that Jamaica has Edison, what should I say? Anti-vaxxers, and it's hard to get some persons to believe in it and to be actual takers of it. Now I want to ask a question. Can someone actually catches COVID-19, their bodies actually respond positively to it, gives no sign at all? How does the well, should I say clinical or the doctors, how does one test to see if you had it? And if so, if someone had actually had it and didn't know that they have it, we call them asymptomatic. I think that those are the ones that are asymptomatic, right?
Asymptomatic.
Asymptomatic.
No symptoms, yeah.
Right. And their body has developed that natural immune defense, right, against it.
Yes.
Is it right because then no antibodies would have been built up to fight against, should there be any other attack? Am I correct?
Yes.
Should that person go and get vaccinated, even though their body already has in the antibodies that will put up that defense?
I think the advice is yes. I'd like to hear what Dr. Watson says.
Okay.
All right. Quickly, because Mark asked a number of questions, we're trying to keep the number, give everyone a chance. So the first question.
Just this last one.
Let me just answer the first question first. If you're vaccinated, yes, you still have to be double masked. All right, still wear a mask to protect yourself. And later when someone asks the questions, we'll answer as to why that's the case. The second question that you ask is, should a person who has had COVID-19 still take the vaccine? And the answer to that is yes. And the reason for that is, just because you had COVID does not automatically mean that you will mount an immune response. And so that is why we have to give booster shots. We have to give booster shots, we have to give second shots, etc., because we want to ensure that you mount an immune response and to be able to create that memory cell. All right. And for that same reason, if you met in an accident 10 years ago and you got your tetanus shot, and 10 years afterwards, you meet an accident, they give you the tetanus shot again, you need a booster so that the immune system can be reminded. Right. And so what we find is, that is why they put that 21-day gap in. The 21-day gap is when the body is likely to quote unquote forget. So what we want to do, that is why we get up to 9 weeks for you to take the vaccine within that 9 weeks again, so the body can be reminded and mount that actually immune response. So if you've had COVID, even if you had symptoms, still take the vaccine because your body needs to mount that immune response, right? So that's the answer to that question.
All right, good. All right, so moving on to our next person, we had PCT, COC.
Sorry, sir. Before you move on, Dr. Jared Kidu is available for a quick, just to say something quickly, because he was late in coming.
Okay, all right, sure.
Okay. Thank you for this opportunity. And I'm sorry I wasn't able to be here earlier on. I'll make my points quickly. 3 big things. One, as a psychiatrist, I see children and adolescents consistently who have been negatively affected by COVID. Not directly, but by the fact that many of them are no longer in school. The school system has broken down because COVID is running all over the place and making so many people sick, and people are not being able to go to school. And it's having devastating effects on our young people. Devastating effects on their emotional development, because kids go to school not just to learn educationally, but they also need to be in school to socialize and learn emotional things as well. And not being in school even for 6 months, much less a year in person, has had tremendous negative effects on our kids. And every year that this goes on, is the bigger the problem it's going to be. So it's our responsibility to help our children who are the most vulnerable by making sure that we are doing what we need to do, that we don't get sick and we can get society kind of back to where it was before in terms of kids being able to go to school regularly. My second point is this, and it's related to some of the things that have been said before, is that we in the church especially, we need to be lovers of the truth. We need to be lovers of the truth. You know, John chapter 8, verse 32 says that you shall know the truth and the truth will set you free. And so we know, especially the Church of Christ, that false doctrine, things like that, is having devastating effects on people's long-term salvation. But truth is truth no matter where it is. And so when it comes to COVID-19, we need to arm ourselves with the truth and not indulge in innuendo or rumors, because the Bible speaks about those things as well. We should not participate in gossip, things that are not true or things that are unnecessarily hurtful. We need to be those who are preaching the truth. And we need to be telling the truth about COVID-19 from the pulpit and within our churches, so that people know what the truth is and know how to get the help that they need. And then the last thing I will say is this, right? You know, when we don't understand, you know, things that we need to understand about the creation of the world, right? Science helps us to really understand those things. So science, true science, is just the study of God's creation, right? And guess what? Viruses is something God made as well. He made everything that we see around us, including this virus, right? He allowed this to develop, right? And so true science allows us to understand or get a view into God's handiwork. And so we understand science that allows us to take airplanes from one place to another, to drive a car from one place to another. These are all scientific principles that we didn't create. God created it. right? But we operate with the knowledge that this is how God created the world, and we take advantage of that knowledge. We have been given the great opportunity of beginning to understand how COVID-19 works and how it kills people and how we can keep ourselves safe. We need to understand and follow through on God's creation to say, you know what, this is what God has done. This is what God has allowed, but he's also given us the insight to understand how this thing works. Therefore, we have to do everything we need to do to understand it, to keep ourselves safe and to keep our loved ones safe and keep everyone around us safe. And especially in the church, we have to do that. And the reason why we have to do that is because we need to love our neighbors as ourselves. We need to be loving towards others. So wearing a mask is not just about us, our individual choice. Getting vaccinated is not just about us, our individual choice. It's about the people around us, because we may never get sick from COVID, but I've seen case after case as a medical doctor, situations where people have gotten COVID and they've been fine and have gotten their parents sick, uncle sick, and they're the ones who die. They're the ones who are in the hospital unable to be able to breathe again, right? So we have to understand we have a responsibility, not just to ourselves, but to those around us. And if we follow through as Christians from that perspective, we can help a lot of people by one, getting vaccinated, but also two, spreading the truth. Because right now, lies are spreading across the country and it's getting a lot of people killed. If we spread the truth around the country, we can save many, many lives. So that's the last thing I'd like to say. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Brother Kidu said a lot. He said a mouthful, and I hope you guys were listening keenly to his 3 points. So we'll continue with our questions. PCT, COC had their hand up for quite a while, so you can go with your question now.
Brother Raven, if I might, after PCT says a lot of good questions are in the chat. I've written some of them down, some of which I think would be a good match in terms of combining some of the questions and answering with one responses. So after PCT, can I just address myself and Dr. Kidu address some of these questions in the chat?
Oh, sure,
all right,
sure.
I'll say them out and then I'll answer them, all right?
All right, sure.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. This is Vivian Norman from Patrick City. All right, Everett, if you may, can you explain to us what is the impact on someone who had got the virus and didn't know that well, even if they know, but what's the impact if someone gets the virus, right, and then gets the vaccine within the 21 days, not outside of the 21 days, but within 21 days. That's number one. Number two, do you have any data that tells us that you can share with us as to how many, from your vantage point, how many persons that had contracted the virus died but didn't take the vaccine? Do you have any data on that?
Very good, 2 questions. So the first question Vivian Norman asked is, if I have COVID and I don't know, asymptomatic, bear in mind that 80 to 85% of persons will be asymptomatic. New data, last year said up to 90%, up to 85% of persons will be asymptomatic, meaning they have no fever, no cough, no nothing. 10 to 12% or 10 to 12% of persons will have mild symptoms, and 4% of persons will be severely ill. All right. So no, I'm in the asymptomatic group and I don't know that I have COVID and I take the vaccine. What can happen? All right, so one or two things, or let me put it here. One or two things can happen because I've seen cases like this before. One, the first thing is that nothing happens. You'll just mount the immune response, just like if anybody else take the vaccine, they have the fever, they have the muscle pain, they have the vomiting, they have the diarrhea. They can have all these other symptoms. The second thing that can happen is that you can actually present with the symptoms of COVID-19, not because you were vaccinated, but because you had COVID-19. Now, here's the thing, and I say I've seen cases like this. You see, when you present to the hospital because, or if, right? And again, these are small portions. Many persons have gotten the vaccine. I'm at a vaccination location. I've seen COVID patients, and so far I've only seen one person who was vaccinated who actually had symptoms of COVID before she got vaccinated. She did the COVID swab on Friday. She took the COVID vaccine on Monday. The test that she did on Friday came back positive. She came in hospital by Wednesday. She stayed in hospital for 3 days and went home. Every single time, persons who present with symptoms who are vaccinated, they're very short stay in hospital, very short stay in hospital. What we find, 99.1% of the persons currently in the hospital at I'm at, 99.1%. I will find similar figures internationally. And this is data that came yesterday, are unvaccinated. If you have COVID and you present with symptoms, they are unvaccinated, 99.1%. Majority of these persons ultimately die, right? So do I have the death rate of in terms of those who are symptomatic and vaccinated? In fact, I do. Well, overall, we have 1,783 deaths. We have 79,000 cases of COVID in Jamaica. This means recovered, unrecovered. I don't have the number of persons in hospital. It's a very good number to look on, but I can tell that 99.1% of the persons who come in hospital and are hospitalized are actually unvaccinated, which means, right? So that is the number that was given. That's the number given internationally as well. Majority of persons who die are unvaccinated. All right, hope that answered the question.
Thank you, Dr. Watts.
I just add that he that has ears to hear, let him hear.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much for that comment as well. Just wanted to jump in quick. I know Dr. Watson wants to take the questions from the chat. I took note that Brother Dunbar's hand was up. What I'm going to ask is that Brother Dunbar go ahead and ask his question. Brother Watson and Dr. Watson and the panelists, you can choose to go straight to the questions in the chat. But I'm going to ask Brother Dunbar if he will just ask his question, and the panelists can take note of that question, right? Because I just want to make sure the person who had their hand up earlier, I know Brother Dunbar's hand was up quickly. So I'm going to ask Brother Dunbar to just ask his question, and the panelists, you can choose to take note of it, and then we can alternate the questions within the chat. I'm going to go back over now to my co-host. The floor is now yours. Brother Dunbar, you can go ahead with your question.
Good evening, everyone. Short question. I haven't heard much being said about what I'm going to ask. I have friends in the church and outside of the church who are anti-vax, who don't believe that the vaccine is healthy. They believe that there are far better treatment out there than the vaccine, such as remdesivir, dexamethasone, ivermectin, convalescent plasma, monoclonal antibodies. I want to know the truth where these things are concerned, because again, some people are simply saying the vaccine has so many side effects, but these things are far much healthier than the vaccine. I want to know the truth where these things are concerned. Is it so that these things are far safer and healthier than the vaccine? Because they are saying that the vaccine has too many side effects and these things. And we hear in the news just lately about ivermectin. Even Dr. Michael Abrahams, who works at the university, says he has taken ivermectin, and there's a big debate going on about that right now.
All right, thank you very much, Brother Dunbar. The questions now go over to the panelists.
I'm going to ask Dr. Watson to the hospital, doctor, so go straight into that.
All right, let me just indulge by saying, you say that ivermectin and all these strategies are actually are better. And I say to you that every single thing has an adverse reaction. You can have resistance, liver failure, renal failure secondary to ivermectin. The monoclonal antibodies can fail. They can have severe adverse reaction that can lead to death by taking monoclonal antibodies, including plasma-related issues. We can take plasma and die from it. You can have liver-related lung injury secondary to autoantibodies because of it, right? Everything has an adverse side effect and they're listed. You can literally go on website right now and look on what are the side effects for ivermectin, etc. Right? So that being said, what are the probabilities of you having an adverse reaction because you take the vaccine? The probability of you having an adverse reaction is less than 1%, which is better than most medication and better than most other avenues, right? However, the issue is that other people are saying that vaccine doesn't cause any side effects, and there are some people who say that vaccine causes a whole heap of side effects. The side effects for the vaccine are listed. In fact, the side effects for this COVID-19 vaccine is the same side effect for every single vaccine that you can have. When you take the BCG when you're a baby, you could have the same side effects. You take the influenza vaccine everywhere, same side effects. When you took the vaccine when you were 6 months old, same side effects, right? You can still develop some of these allergic reaction, etc. However, other things that we have seen that persons are concerned about are the position of clots and the position of bleeding, which can be seen in some of the vaccines, not all of them. And the percentage of these persons are low. May I also add that further studies show that majority of these persons had factors or risk factors that already put them at bleeding, that already put them at attaining clots. So for example, you have cancer, you're bedridden, you go take the vaccine, or you had a previous history of having a clot, right? Doesn't mean if you have cancer, you can't take the vaccine, you can, but there's some categories of persons who do not. If you're on warfarin, that can increase your risk of bleeding. Warfarin can cause death. I've seen warfarin cause death much more than persons having an adverse reaction to vaccine. Now to the question at large, what about these other avenues? Again, COVID-19 is a virus. We don't give antibiotic for viruses, right? What we have seen, however, is a temperamentation or rather a lessening of the side effects when we give some medications, and it is not the same in everybody, right? The studies are still ongoing. The studies of ivermectin, we've seen in one country where it shows decrease in viral load, but in some countries there's no change. With the monoclonal antibodies, these things are actually, so people who actually have COVID have to go into centers, give them blood, they are able to get the antibodies from the blood for the persons who actually have COVID and make these antibodies available to other persons, right? These things are available and we're trying some of them at the hospital. We're actually giving persons some of them and we have seen no change, right? So I'm just letting you know that in some persons, they may have changed in some persons, but bear in mind that regardless of whether or not you take these medications, the sequelae of COVID, if it's going to happen to you, it's going to happen to you. I said that, and that is the truth behind it. If you have a predisposition of having a clot, you're going to get the clot, all right? Not from the vaccine, but from COVID, I'm talking about here, right? What we can do is to try to lessen the probability of the clot getting worse. But I'm telling you, if you have renal failure, you have predisposition for renal failure, and you get COVID, the probability of you having renal disease in the long term is actually there as well. But just to let you know that we give the dexamethasone in every COVID patient that comes to the hospital. We give the heparin in all the patients that come to the hospital. We give the rocaffin, etc. And they're still on oxygen to this day. Some people are there for 3 weeks. No change. All right. But we still go ahead and try these interventions because, as I said, the thing about medicine is evidence-based. So if there's evidence to show that there's some temperamentation, meaning that there's some changes in person, if they take this medication, we will try it. But I have seen no change. And we have people or pharmacists now giving ivermectin to patients and people write prescriptions to ivermectin, them still come in hospital and they still get hospitalized. No change. I'm just saying what I have seen, right? So there is still further studies to come and whatever. But the long-term solution is vaccination. Because you know what? Vaccination works, right? And we've seen where the vaccines actually reduce the risk of spread among persons, especially those who have had COVID and had the vaccine, shorter hospital stays, and the risk of passing it on as well is much lower in persons who have had the COVID-19 vaccines. Very long.
All right. That's a very good and a very long answer. I'm sure there's a lot of persons' questions that are in the chat were answered as well. But the panelists, I think you guys have made note of the various questions in the chat. And I think Brother Watts would like to go first with addressing a few of these questions. Is that so, sir?
Yeah, man, that's right. And Sister Kitty will jump in as well. The first one is how long after you get COVID should you take the vaccine? We recommend 21 days, 3 weeks, some people 6 weeks. I keep the 3 weeks in mind and say after 3 weeks, if you are asymptomatic, most important, if you are asymptomatic, you can go ahead. So I tell persons 3 weeks after you are asymptomatic, you're still having symptoms, cough, runny nose, fever, do not go ahead, even if it's 3 weeks after. If some persons may have persistent symptoms, 3 weeks after you've had the vaccine, you are asymptomatic, that is the time you go ahead and take the vaccine. Does vitamin D help? Boy, I can comment on this, and I'm being honest. Dr. Kidu can go ahead and comment on it. She is the physician that sees people every day. She would give the vitamin, etc. She can go ahead and give a response to that. Before she does, can the vaccinated get COVID? Yes. However, hospital stays are much shorter. Risk of having adverse effects are much shorter. The question is, what if church leaders ignore the regulations set by them, by the government? Let me just jump and say that in the middle part of this pandemic, churches were the locus of infection. There was a big issue with some church in Clarendon. We don't want that to be said of the Church of Christ. Follow the protocols, please. Put on your mask, etc. Because we don't want the church. We are going to be the example to the world that you can still have service and not be a focus for infection. Somebody asked, does cleaning your items with alcohol help? Let me tell you something. Long before this whole pandemic, I clean my items. I clean my items with alcohol because you see people, they sneeze and they touch stuff. People have one gloves and they wear the one gloves for 50 million places and they touch the products. I clean with alcohol.
No one knows the long-term effect.
Finally, up to this point, the question, if 98% of persons are going to be asymptomatic, or if 90% of persons recover, why should I take the vaccine? I mentioned earlier in my presentation that not dead does not mean that you have recovered. Several persons will have the sequelae of COVID. So 6 weeks after, you might present with a clot. 6 weeks after, 1 month after, 6 months after, you might have psychological. We have a thing called COVID confusion. There's a lot of sequelae that recover. So not that does not mean that you have recovered. But important reasons why we vaccinate is right here. Let me go across. Majority, and let me say this, working at Sense Hospital, majority of the persons who have COVID and are hospitalized were staying at home. And if somebody come and visit them, Sister Kidu talk about it, grandchildren being the spreaders of COVID, children were the spreaders. A number of times, you can imagine you're staying at home with your mother, and then your cousin come from foreign, and I've seen this case again, several cases again. There's a man come from the United States, he visited his family for 3 days and went home. Both of his parents are now dead. They had COVID. He had COVID, was asymptomatic. And that is why we vaccinate, because majority of the persons are asymptomatic, and they are the spreaders of COVID. You are going to spread COVID to at least 2 to 3 persons if you're asymptomatic and you have the illness. The sneeze one time I walk with, people walk in the air, they have on the mask, they catch COVID, 2 to 3 persons are likely to get it, right? And so that is why we vaccinate, because the asymptomatic people are the spreaders of COVID, all right? So let me just stop there. We'll go on to the questions. Sister Kid, we can go ahead and talk about vitamin D if she wishes, all right?
Is Sister Kidu there?
Yes, no, she's going to leave another question. Go ahead.
So she's on, all right. So in the meantime, we'll ask Mr. Stephen Smith. Your hand is up, so you may ask your question. Mr. Smith?
No, Simpson is the name, please, sir.
Oh, Simpson, sorry.
Not a
Simpson, sorry.
problem. Not a problem. Good afternoon, doctors and friends. I thought initially that based on the promo that I got, that we would have been presenting information that would give persons who may want to take the vaccine or those who may not want to take the vaccine options going way forward. But from what I'm seeing, that the presentation is encouraging person to take the vaccine. And I can understand, not a problem. I'm asking a question, I asked it in the chat, if 98% of persons recover from COVID, why is it that, let me ask it this way, sorry, I'm bringing up the question again. If 98% of persons recover naturally and in their process of recovery would have acquired the vaccine naturally, why is it that this data is not being promoted as much as that which is encouraged to a vaccine? Since these persons, 98%, what I hear being promoted, it is the death and not the recovery. 78,000 persons in Jamaica contracted the virus. 1,700 have died approximately. Is 1,700 too many? But there is the majority. If 98% of persons have recovered naturally, why is this not being encouraged? And understand why is it that these 98% persons recover?
I just answered that question, Brother Simpson. I mentioned it in two ways. One, the first reason I mentioned is that yes, 98% of persons will recover, but bear in mind, and the whole thing about natural immunity, that you having COVID does not automatically mean that your body will create that memory cells. You will mount our immune response, but we needed to create that memory cell so that should you have it there, decrease the probability of you actually decreasing tissue damage. This is why we give persons the two vaccines, right? We give it because we want to ensure that you mount an immune response. So yes, you can get COVID and you don't mount an immune response at all. In fact, you might get COVID, your body might be overwhelmed, the immune system might not mount that response that we require to create that memory cell. So that is why, we encourage vaccination, because we want to ensure that to create that memory cell, you mount the immune response, and should you get COVID again, then guess what? The rate of the likelihood of tissue damage is much less. I think you might ask the question, yeah, and I think I answered it, right? Both of them together. That is why.
A quick follow-up, sir, sorry. I heard Dr. Fauci said this afternoon in an interview that those who have recovered naturally would have built up and have an immune system that would fight the COVID. He said that. However, he said that the COVID would help you 2 times more than the natural immune system. And so it is not that it doesn't have a residual effect or a lasting resistance against the COVID. It does, but it may not be as strong as the vaccine. And the natural...
Hold on. Let me just address that quickly.
I'm just saying to you what Dr. Fauci said this afternoon.
Yeah, man. I know, and I know you're supporting the point. But let me just make this clear, right? But remember when I listed, the doses, etc. We talk about the efficacy of it, right? You having the COVID, if me get corona, does not automatically mean that I will mount an immune response. The reason why we give you the vaccine is to ensure that that happens, right? So natural immunity, yes, you get the virus, does not. So I want to ensure, and I know you're supporting the point by saying that just getting the COVID alone isn't sufficient. If you get the vaccine, it make it even better. I know you're supporting that, but I just want to highlight that just getting COVID alone does not mean that you will mount a response, an immune response that will generate the memory cell. All right? You can go ahead with the point.
Brother Raven, can you just go to the next question, please?
All right, so a lot of persons in the chat are asking about children under 12. How can we protect them from contracting the virus? Other persons are asking that. Children under 12. How can we protect them from the virus?
Yeah, go ahead.
That is perhaps the most perplexing of the situations right now, all around the world. And of course, they have been taught to sanitize, right? And also to wear a mask. But as soon as they get with their friends, they pull it down. So that's going to be difficult for now until they come up with suitable vaccines for the younger age group. I see where there's this country that Cuba has authorized their country parents to immunize children 2 years and up. I think everybody in the world would be watching what is the effect of that. But for the time being, that's a very perplexing thing. I don't know if Dr. Watson has anything to add.
Oh, but that's sufficient. The whole issue of mask is most important, prevention, right? So ensuring that they keep on the mask is a very good way to do that, as well as we say, social distancing. We know children tend to be very sociable and want to be around everybody, want to touch everything. We have to try to encourage and instill in them that they don't do so. But wearing mask is most important, right? So I won't add much to it. There are a lot of good questions in the chat. I know that Raven want to go ahead and ask about the different persons, and then we can go ahead and answer the questions in the chat. Time is going, but
yeah. So GB, your hand is up. You may go. GB, person's device with GB.
Okay, thanks very much. I had an incident where I had a terrible toothache, and I went to the emergency hospital, emergency section, and to have it extracted. However, what they did is that to help with the pain, they injected me with some Orphan. Now, what happened is I had an adverse reaction to that because my arms actually started, I got a shooting pain down my arm. It still hurts me today. It's still, the area that they injected was still swollen. And I heard some time ago a doctor saying that one of the reasons why you get blood clots from the COVID vaccine is when the person injected you in the nerve. Now, I wanted to confirm that with you all, as well as the fact that there's a condition called SIRVAL, which is, I think it's shoulder injury resulting from vaccine administration. If you know anything about that. It has me concerned about actually taking the vaccine because of that experience. And so could you give me some response to that, please? Thanks.
All right, so who would like to answer that one?
all right, so quickly, no, you don't get clots by injecting in the nerve. Nerve has nothing to do with clots. Clots are formed in the blood vessel, right? As to why one person gets it over another, sure, there are still studies in play. And we find that some, as I said, some persons were predisposed, meaning that they have either genetic disposition or they would have developed clots later on in life. Some women were on fertility medication, etc., which would predispose them to getting clots. So I'm not agreeing that injection in the nerve don't cause clots. As regards to the painful arm, as I said, there are some effects where some person might have painful arm, but usually those resolve after up to 10 days, right? I'm not sure how to address your particular concern, being the fact that, oh, if you get the injection, the pain in the arm will last for a long time. After 10 days, most time they resolve. If, however, after 10 days, you're still having persistent pain in the arm, I believe that you should visit a physician just to ensure that there's no collection, serous collection or liquid collection under the injection site. Because that can happen in very small cases. That can happen with any injection at all. You get Voltaren injection, that can happen with Rocafin injection, right? So just to make sure there's no collection underneath the injection site.
Dr.
All right?
Kidu,
In addition, the muscle that is right over the shoulder going to the arm, the deltoid muscle, the person giving the injection has to make sure that you don't put the medication in the lower part of the deltoid muscle. Because if that happens, that can certainly give you pain because that's where the nerve and the muscles go by the joint. But the fatter part of the shoulder where your sleeve would start, that is the ideal place for it. So some persons I've seen on TV, and I think the needle is going a little bit too low. If it went higher up on the shoulder, the fatter part, near to where the sleeve would begin, you wouldn't get that pain that goes down into the arm.
That's an excellent point, Dr. Kido. The axillary nerve runs in that way.
Absolutely.
Right, but getting clots because they're injecting the nerve? No. Getting
No,
pain
no,
because
no.
they're injecting it? Right, that can happen. All right. Rayvon, I don't know if you want me to jump through some questions.
Brother Dr. Watson,
We'll
just
go
a quick, Rayvon, just wanted to
Sit down.
comment. All right, so we want to get through these questions as soon as possible. So I'm gonna suggest that we, Brother Watson, Dr. Watson, we go through the questions in the chat. I'm gonna ask persons who have their hands.
I want to make sure.
All right, I know why I'm with the feedback. Can my admins help me out there? We're not supposed to keep their mics muted at this time, please and thank you. All right, so we want to go through the chat questions. I'm going to ask persons who have their hands raised. Please, we thank you for your patience. I see Auntie Marcia's hand up. I see Bertram Jean hand up. Thank you for your patience. We're going to ask that we're going to go through the chat right now, get some questions out there. We're going to come to the person with their hands raised. We're going to kindly ask the persons who have their hands raised to please keep your questions to the point. Thank you very much. Over to you, Brother Rayvon.
All right. So one is that what advice do you have for a person who has an history with asthma in their childhood and is strongly against the vaccine? What advice would you give to that person?
That person can take the vaccine. Why is Sister Kido? The person can take the vaccine.
Absolutely, it's essential that that person takes the vaccine because since the virus hits the lungs, can you imagine what would happen with the asthma and the virus acting up at the same time? So you must get the vaccine.
All right, next question. Would you recommend pregnant women to be vaccinated?
All right, so that's a very touchy area. As it is right now in Jamaica, I see that they're holding that for pregnant women. Sorry, somebody else is talking. Right, so I see where they're actually holding it for pregnant women. Some countries actually allow pregnant women to go ahead and take the vaccine, but in Jamaica, I see, and for those who go to the vaccination site, that's an important history to denote, but I don't see them administering to pregnant women. As yet, in my location, as I said, some places do it. Personally, I will hold until after 6 weeks, about 6 weeks after the person has given birth to go ahead and give the vaccine at that point. That is my recommendation.
And of course, one of the reasons too, brother, is that when the vaccines first arrived in the island, one of the things was stated infertility was a big problem, that they were infertile, can't have babies, so and so. So I think it's wise to withhold it for the time being until the science comes in and we can act on it.
All right, great. Next question. If you have an issue of clotting, what do you do if you have an interest in taking the vaccine?
Previous history of clots, would not recommend taking the vaccine. And it's because well, let me just say this. Previous history of clots, talk to your physician because I don't know your history, right? I'm not sure what your predisposition is. Is it that you got the clots because you were taking oral contraceptive pill? Is that you got the clots because you had cancer? And I see somebody, is very strong in the group, in the chat. Excellent point. They have cancer and they still take the vaccine. And I still recommend persons with cancer to take the vaccine, right? However, if you have cancer and you've had a history of clots, we would hold the vaccine for those persons. So previous history of clots, we will hold. We hold the vaccine for persons.
Well, I can just attest to this part for myself. I've had 2 clots, both times in pregnancies. and I still went ahead. Mark, it was that was many years ago, but I still went ahead and had the vaccination without any hesitation. So
right, yeah. So the point is everybody's history is different, which is why I say everybody. So person will take it because they had OCPs that are clot previous and they were taking OCPs. We give the vaccine, right? But if a person we don't know the cause that you're getting the clots, you know, if you're clots in pregnancy, you're not pregnant, no, we can't give you the vaccine, right? So there are different reasons. So for most persons, however, if you're uncertain as to the cause as to why you get the clot, we're not going to give you, we're going to hold. But for persons, I say the first comment I mentioned is talk to your doctor first, because it's different for different persons.
agreed,
all right?
Agreed.
All right. So next question, how soon can you take the vaccine if after the first dose you contract the virus?
I think we answered that. 21 days after you are asymptomatic or you have a negative COVID test, which is very important. Usually persons who have had COVID, we do a re-swabbing 14 days after, or when they're asymptomatic, and if the test is negative and they have no symptoms, you can go ahead 21 days after you're asymptomatic.
All right, next one, it says, is it true that the vaccine destroys the immune system?
To go ahead, Sister Kit.
No, I'm sorry. If I laughed, sorry. That's the exact opposite of what the vaccine does.
Exactly. So no, it does not destroy the immune system.
All right, next one, it says, why is the Cuban vaccine not recognized?
I wouldn't say it's not recognized. It's been issued, right? But one of the things that we have to keep in mind is how international vaccination process works and how there's a process, right? So when we talk about something that's FDA approved, it means that it passed through a line of processing, right? So it's not just, oh, we make a vaccine, take it. No, there's a testing protocol, there's a trial phase, there are several phases that occur before the vaccine is actually recognized by FDA or recognized internationally, all right? I don't believe the Cuban vaccine is still in some phase, but I can't really comment on that necessarily, but I know that there are several phases that occur, all right?
All right.
So it's not that it's not recognized, it's not that it's not recognized, it is not internationally approved as yet.
All right, so one general question that a lot of persons are asking is, if you can still contract the virus after taking the vaccine, what's the sense of taking the vaccine then instead of just wearing the mask?
Well, the same can be said about the flu. You can always contract the flu, even after you take the vaccine year after year, but you will not be as ill. So that's the important thing, is to keep alive while you can and do what you can. So it's the same thing applies to the flu. You get the flu this year, next year you take the vaccine, the following year you get flu again, whatever. Same thing with the coronavirus.
And I agree 100%, right? So remember that when you've been vaccinated, if you get COVID after vaccination, what will happen? The degree of tissue damage will be far less because the body recognize, it respond, it kill the virus. Remember I mentioned persons who came in, was vaccinated, had COVID, 3-day hospital stay, right? That does not mean though that, you know, persons will come and say, but I know somebody who vaccinated and died. That can happen, right? But we're looking on 99.1% unvaccinated, hospitalized. Majority of the persons who die being unvaccinated. We see that vaccination actually limits mortality and limits morbidity. All right.
All right. Thank you very much,
great.
Dr. Watson. Brother Raven, before you
Yeah,
continue in the chat,
there's
I would
3
like
more
to...
questions we have leave with their hands up. All the questions in the chat are basically answered already.
Okay, because I was about to say, let's go to the first.
I want to see if we can end at what, by 6.
All right,
so,
Brother Raven, over to you then.
All right, so we have Mr. Roy's hand. His hand was up for quite some time. So over to you, Mr. Roy. Your hand has been up for quite some time. So your time now, sir.
Brother Grenell, your mic is muted, sir. We'd like to hear that Grenadian accent, sir.
Okay, good evening. I appreciate the panel and the way that they have dealt with the issues and the questions. My question is, what can be done with health personnel, ministries of health across the Caribbean, and maybe across the world? Because we notice that people are fighting against one another, the vaccinated against the unvaccinated, and it doesn't help. So with the success of what you all have done in Jamaica, is what can be done by ministries of health and health departments to motivate people to be educated and consider for their own good to take the vaccine. What are your contributions in terms of what can you advise, what can be done in the world? Because the world has degenerated into a fight between vaccinated and unvaccinated people. So that is my question.
All right, so anyone would like to answer that question?
Sister Kidu, go ahead. So just to summarize, you're saying what can the ministries do in order to boost vaccination? Is that the question?
Yes, and to help people to not get into the fight of the vaccinated fighting against the unvaccinated.
There's a history now as to why this is the case, right? A lot of persons do not trust medicine, and they don't trust doctors, and they don't trust the medical fraternity on a whole. They believe that this is a money-making thing. And so there's this large distrust for the medical fraternity. And as soon as somebody come and say you must gargle better, I see a comment, gargle, why would you gargle betadine? That's a poison. Why would you gargle that? You know, so it's an antiseptic, and people put it in their throat, and they present a hospital because they aspirate chemical. People are willing to listen to anything that says natural remedy, right? Before they listen to doctors and physicians. All right. And it's just a cultural thing, right? A lot of us were younger, we might have to go warm, bush tea, etc. So what we can do is to try to, represent the data as best as we can and educate, which is the number one thing, which is what we're doing here. We're trying our best to educate people. But as I said, there is a history as to why there's a distrust of vaccine. I know some people don't even know about the Tuskegee study and how the whole thing with the American, how them, etc. So there's a lot of distrust. This is what we're saying now as physician. I'm saying, right, that I have read the information and I trust the information that I read. I am fully vaccinated. I've taken the vaccine. If I don't think it was good for me, I would not have taken it. If I don't think it was good for you, I would not be promoting it, right? So, and that is why the health sector were the first set of people to go ahead and take the vaccine, because we want to show the world that we believe that it is safe, right? So the most important thing is educate, and try to limit these cultural differences and these cultural issues that we believe, and hold on to the bush tea thing, which is causing too many illnesses in the country area here in St. Anne, and so forth. I don't know if Dr. Kidu wants to make a comment.
My only comment, really, I agree with everything you said. The puzzling thing worldwide is that even persons who are highly educated have this doubt as well, right? When patients come to me and say, Doc, I'm not taking that medicine, I prefer to take garlic, this and so on. I say, yes, the Bible does say healing in the herbs for the nation, but you have to measure it out, because if you take too much of some herbs, they can kill you. So you have to be wise in that. But it is perplexing all the governments around the world why even highly educated people are not willing. There is just this sense of doubt. But I tell you, guess who is willing to take the vaccine? On their dying bed. You know how many people said, give me the vaccine now, doc, give me the vaccine now.
Yes,
on
and I
their
can
dying bed.
say that
They're
for sure.
converted.
I can say that for sure. right? There was a day in A&E, oh my gosh. We had, and this is important because this is going to, answer some people's question. And this was when Brother Kerr was in the hospital as well. We were out of oxygen. And I look on the lady and they said to me, Doc, but you see my mother need oxygen. And I said to her, Miss, the only way somebody else can get oxygen at this point is if somebody else dies. And she said, so you tell me all this time COVID is real? Yes, COVID real. You see, and I see somebody saying that, this is just the information that's been fed to us. Why? So how is it that when one person come on and say, guys, I believe this medication works, everybody jump on the bandwagon immediately. You trust that source completely and 100%, and why is that information is being fed to you, right? So what we find, that is why we have physicians who are in the church or persons they can talk to. I say to people all the time, ask your questions. If you think this, the reason why, and it's the same way we approach doctrine, when persons have a particular belief, let them ask the questions and that we discuss it and we can find the best middle ground or the best truth as to what can be done. I can't force you to take the vaccine. I can only encourage you to take the vaccine. And I wish I could have taken a picture in A&E when we were out of oxygen and people were just begging to take the vaccine. Begging.
All right, next person, Jean. Your hand is up. You may go with your question.
Okay, good evening to panel of doctors and to the brotherhood. I am well informed tonight on this virus. I'm grateful to the doctors. I think I took it early in March. But I would like to know, we have what we call the mask, and we have disposable, and we also have what people with the cloth one where it's reusable, where it can be washed. Doc, probably you all can inform, how long should it says usable, but I have seen and observed persons wearing it for more than a day. And we know how contagious that virus is. So I want advice as to how long would you say whether the cloth, the one that can be reused or the disposable should remain on one's face? Because you may go to the supermarket this morning and you didn't come into contact with many people and you came right back to your home. Should you use that mask again if you go make another trip to the supermarket or elsewhere? Thank you.
Dr. Watson? All right, in A&E, we keep it on for 4 hours. 4 to 6 hours is the recommended time, after which you dispose of the mask. All right. So just to note that. All right. So 4 to 6 hours dispose of it. It has been shown that the cloth masks are ineffective. It's better to get the surgical mask. The surgical mask tends to be more is effective. That's what we use in surgeries. That's the reason why they're called surgical masks. And you could supplement that with a face shield as well. All right, to double mask up as well. All right, so 4 to 6 hours.
All right, good. Anything, Dr. Kidu?
No.
All right, next person, Koninam. Your turn, O'Shane Koninam.
Yes, good evening. My question is, what is viral immune escape?
What?
Repeat the question.
What is viral immune escape?
Dr. Watson, you better deal with that one.
All right, so essentially what happened is that when a person is given the immune response, the virus does not essentially respond to the immune system. So the immune fighters are trying to fight, but the virus overtakes the immune system. The immune system does not fight against the virus. That's a summary of what viral immune escape is. But that can be Googled. What's the relevance of that question?
Well, I came across some information where they were saying regarding to the variants. Does that have anything to do with the come about of the variants, and
No, no. All right. I'm going to use this, and Kidu, Dr. Kidu can work with me here. Usually when, for example, some adenoviruses like HIV, we do a blood test to look on the viral load. The viral load basically says how much of the virus is replicated in the body, right? So with viral immune escape, the viral load is so high that the immune system gets exhausted, right? It has nothing to do with the variants. Right? So all it does, it means the body is overwhelmed by the virus because of the high viral load. The immune system does not respond. How we get the variants, however, as I said, the viruses communicate. So there are RNA viruses, and they just change a simple part of it, and when they change a simple part of it, they suddenly become different, right? And that's how we get the different variants. It's the same reason, and that is why we have to take the influenza vaccine every year, because the influenza vaccine constantly changing, and every year we have a new outbreak with a new influenza virus. All right, so that's
just a follow up. Is there anything
just
such
before
as
you put that follow-up question, I just want to make a very important comment. All right, so we are now at 6 p.m. in Jamaica, and at 7 p.m. in the Eastern Caribbean. We want to wrap up within the next 5 to 10 minutes. So the persons who currently have their hands up, we won't be taking any more questions after those persons who are now in the queue. And we want to remember to keep these questions as concise as possible. Brother O'Shane, you can go ahead with
there's
your
something
follow-up
as a
question.
super variant, and what does it do?
I'm not aware of a super variant, Brother O'Shane Cunningham. Remember that as information is released, meaning that as an information is not based on a single case. So people say, I have one case in which this and this happened. No, we don't base information on one case. So we have to base information on a collective data, right? And within the collective data, we can then look on how it can impact the community, etc. So I don't know about a super variant. I'm not aware of that.
That term, however, may be used to describe the Delta, which is far more easily transmissible than the previous ones. So I don't know if that's where that term came from. I'm not saying that's where it came from, but I could understand that. If they said that there's a variant that is better than the rest, well, Delta.
All right. Next
Brother
person.
Raven, before you bring up the next person, let me just quickly say, I'm going to kindly ask Brother Roy Grenew to stand by for the closing prayer. Also, Brother Desroy Reed will be doing the vote of thanks. All right, so Brother Roy Grenew, please stand by to close us the word of prayer, as well as Brother Desroy Reed will be doing the vote of thanks. Go ahead, brother. And we're going to ask person not to draw on my screen. Thank you very much.
All right, so Tamara Johnson, your question, miss?
Good afternoon. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
All right. On the matter of the distrust, I think what is happening is that there's not enough information with respect to the side effects of the vaccination. I'm vaccinated. All right. Just a disclaimer here. I'm vaccinated. However, when you go to the doctor, for example, under normal circumstances, say you go to get some, I don't know, birth control, they'll tell you this can happen, that can happen, and so on. And as a result of that, as a patient, you leave. If you don't make a decision right away, you leave and you go home and you'll think about it, and then you're able to make an informed decision. However, I realize with the COVID vaccinations, they're not telling you what are some possible side effects. Tell the public the possible side effects. Like I said, I'm vaccinated. Tell the public the possible side effects, and then allow the public to say, you know what, okay, they say this can happen, they say that can happen, but you know what, I'm going to take it because, and I'm going to take, but when we keep, I find that there is in a thrust to get the population vaccinated, there is this hush hush with regards to the side effects. There are side effects of the vaccination, right? So go ahead and tell us the side effects of the vaccination so that people can make an informed decision. And so because they're not being told what some of the side effects are, then they're ready now and willing to listen to the naysayers out there who are not informed at all. They're now more ready and willing to listen to the naysayers. So I'm thinking, tell people there are side effects. What are the side effects? And if you're not sure to, tell people this is a new vaccine. we're still working on it. We are not sure. And when you're presenting deaths and so on, tell people, yes, people have died from the vaccine, because I'm sure persons have died from complications of the vaccines and so on. In the same way, you have unvaccinated persons that are dying. So level the playing field and allow persons to make informed decision. Not so much a question, just a comment. Thank you.
Valid comment. Let me just say quickly that we do inform people. We do inform people. And here's the thing about it, right? I often find that when you inform people and tell them these are the side effects and etc., people are still hesitant, and this hesitancy, as I say, is as a result of other information that may exist, right? But I get your point that and we we do inform people, and that is why there's this. That is why we're doing this now, right? To ensure that people understand that there are side effects to these illnesses. However, what we have happening is that there is an exaggeration of these side effects, right? And that is ultimately what it is. But I won't comment more on the matter.
All right. Allen, Marcia Allen, your turn.
Raven, thank you. Just
You're
a
welcome.
comment. Thank you, doctors, for a wonderful presentation. I've had stage 4 cancer for 6 years. And when all the vaccine came up, I didn't hesitate. I was told of all the side effects. And I said to myself, jokingly, if I took so much chemo in my body and so much radiation, I'm going to take the vaccine. And I took it and I'm quite fine. All I had was a pain at the injection site. And I'm fine. With all the negativity going around with those who have underlying illnesses, I just prayed about it and did my thing.
Amen.
Thank you.
Excellent.
We have one last question on the personal hand up, and we have one last question in the chat, and then we'll move on to our prayer and vote of thanks. So GB is the last person with a question.
Yes, good night again, brethren. I would like to find out if there's any truth to the statement that the flu kills more people on a yearly basis than the COVID. And if so, why the need for the pandemic? Thanks.
That's false.
Go ahead, Sister Kidu. You answered it earlier.
No, I'm kind of struck because he seems to have it upside down. The flu kills more than the pandemic has been around. This particular pandemic has been around for about a year and a half. And it has certainly wiped out far more people than the flu.
The exact statistic is that 10 times. It kills 10 times more people than the flu. The flu kills 50,000 people per year in the United States. And so far, the virus has killed 670,000 people in the United States.
This pandemic,
The
yes.
pandemic, yeah. The pandemic, sorry. Pandemic. So it's 10 times more dangerous.
All right, so the last question from the chat is, if double masking is over 90% effective for stopping transmission, how can children under 12 be best protected since double masking is not practical for them? Also, are the effects of COVID on children the same as adults? For adults, the suggestion was exercise, water to stay healthy. Are those the same recommendation for children? Also, is there any additional things that can be done to keep children under 12 safe? And is there any available information on the vaccination of children under the age of 12?
Let me go first. Let me go first because I think I did mention that double masking, and perhaps I didn't say it clearly enough. If you double mask and the person who is talking to you is double masked, that's when you get, that's what I read. That's when you get the 90+% protection. So you may double mask and the other person in the room only has on a single mask, it won't be as much as 90%. That's what they're finding, they claim, the scientists. No, I think the question about children under 12 was answered. I don't know if the person wasn't here who asked. That children under 12, they're still studying the effects of the vaccine, so they are not quick to give them the vaccine. But it is happening in Cuba. We'll know what happens there, and then the rest of the world will be able to make a decision.
All right, all right. All right, so Nata Bliss, you're the last person with your hand up. So ask your question and then we will have our vote of our prayer, then our vote of thanks.
Sorry, may I say
Sure,
one
sure.
more thing? One more thing about it. You did ask about the
Effects on
exercise.
children, yeah. The effects of
Yes,
the
well, I think it goes without saying, because the problem certainly in the Caribbean is because of the fast food and the oily food and all of that. Children are becoming obese, becoming diabetic in earlier state of life, all of that. So exercise, drinking water, good for the goose and good for the gander, good for the old and good for the young.
All right. So Nata Bliss.
Before the
last person, okay.
After the last person, after this one comment, all right?
Okay, all right, sure. Nata Bliss.
Before the question being asked, I just want
Okay.
to just quickly do a little projection what's gonna happen. So we're gonna ask Dr. Watson and Dr. Kidu to do their quick 1 minute summary of all that was said. So we ask them to summarize all that they said, their presentation. So after the last question, we take the summary. After that, we have the vote of thanks and closing prayer. Brother Desroy Reed will do the vote of thanks. And we ask Brother Roy Grenew from he's originally from Dominica, now in Canada. I was told that I had it wrong. So let me say he's from Dominica and he is now worshiping at one of the ministers in Canada. We do the closing prayer.
Andre,
yes,
Andre,
brother.
before you go, is not the summary is Gladwin Kiddo that will do the summary. He'll do the summary and close off. And then we have the opening. Yes, Gladwin, we have the opening prayer and the vote of thanks.
All right, great. Final question from Brother, we're over to Brother Raven.
Yes, so the last person is Nata Bliss. So your questions.
Yes, good evening.
Yeah, good evening.
Yes, when persons typical on a normal basis go to the doctor, right? The doctor will ask you, are you allergic to any medication before they go ahead and prescribe whatever medication for whatever ailment you went for, right? How is it not the same with this vaccine? Is it one size fit all that everybody is automatically agreeing with their system?
All right,
And number two question, for children, why are children being interfered with if the facts have shown, studies have shown that their system is stronger than, their immune system is stronger than ours and being able to ward off sicknesses, etc. And would it not reduce the effect of them being naturally warding off sickness in the future?
All right, so who would like to answer that one?
All right, let me just go to the children quickly. Sister Kitty doesn't mind. Apologies, I just missed the first part of the question, but regarding to children, it's not that their immune system is stronger. Bear in mind that children they're still underexposed in terms of antigens, etc. Their immune system is not stronger. They're just as at risk of getting the virus as you are, and they're just as at risk of dying from the virus as you are. All right, so let me just make that very clear. It's a case where
what they are in their studies when they are saying that I've read listened to scientists that said their immune system is stronger.
What they're saying is that certain people under a certain age are more likely to be asymptomatic than persons who are, for example, 65 years and older. What we're finding children is that a large percentage of them, about 99%, tend to be asymptomatic. They're spreaders, however, you must know that they're spreaders, however. But children do die from COVID. Children do have adverse effects from COVID. All right, so it's not a case where, oh, children's immune system are stronger. They're still likely to have the illness. They're still likely to have adverse effects. However, we find that a large percentage of them tend to be asymptomatic. With that being said, however, which is why much is not known about as Sister Kidu said, we're still studying the effects of the vaccine, particularly on children. That information is not yet available. And so when it becomes available, we can better inform as to how vaccination and children would work. All right?
Okay.
Yeah, just add also that children are less likely to have the serious medical conditions of hypertension, diabetes, those illnesses that quickly take you off if you get the COVID. So remember, they do catch it. That's the important thing. And certainly in Europe, a lot of children gave their grandparents the COVID, and the grandparents died and the children didn't die, right? No, she asked about the allergic response. I'm not sure what she really meant, because we are just learning more and more about the COVID. So what allergic response are you?
No, what I'm saying that when you go to the doctor on a regular basis, normally they would ask you if you are allergic to any medication before they prescribe. For example, if Scarlett, that me and you go to the doctor for the same ailment, we both won't get the same medication based on our system.
Yes, but to know if you're allergic, you would have had to have had it before, don't you see?
Right, and you wouldn't have got the vaccine before.
So
right,
therefore,
why are these vaccines?
All right, I'm going to ask. We're running out of time, and we don't want to be back and forth on this issue. So I'm going to ask just wrap up this question. Brother Watts, based on what you heard, can you just sum up that so we can move ahead? Thank you.
The long and short of it is that if you've never been given a medication before, we don't know if you've had an allergic reaction to it, similar with the COVID-19. But we put measures in place, right? And we have had persons who've had allergic reaction to vaccines, any vaccine in particular. A baby who is 6 weeks old or just born, we don't know if they're going to be allergic to BCG, but we give them anyway, right? Right. And when they become allergic to it, that's the time we decide that we can go ahead and administer their necessary medication and take note of the fact that they have prior allergic reaction to a particular vaccine. All right?
All right, thank you very much. We will now have the review by Brother Gladwin Kidu, and then we have the closing prayer. Brother
remember,
Kidu.
I had some points, brother. I know we're pressed for time. Can I just ask for 2 minutes, please?
Sure.
Sorry,
the 2 minutes is quickly just to talk about some things that I have to, summarize. Can I take the vaccine if I'm tested positive? No. 21 weeks, 21 days after, or 3 weeks after, you are asymptomatic. Can you get COVID a second time? Yes, you can, but the likelihood of having severe illness because of it is less likely. Doesn't mean that it's impossible, but it's less likely, right? If you have prior medical illness, I would advise you to speak to your physician before you go ahead and take the vaccine. We may advise 4 or a wait time, depending on it. Someone asked about methotrexate and the use and the likelihood of being, interacting with the vaccine. Again, speak to your physician first. All right. Can I get a test for clot? We only test for clots if you're symptomatic of the clot. If you don't have symptoms of the clot, it makes no sense to test for the clot. Your test will come back likely to be negative. If you have poor circulation, can you still take the vaccine? Yes, you can. What about arthritis and some other illnesses? Again, speak to a physician. Arthritis is not a contraindication to the vaccine. I just want to make sure that a number of persons have your question answered. All right? So we can now turn over to Brother.
Yes, we organized this seminar because of the importance of truth. You know, the Bible says you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free.
And the truth shall set you free.
And we have had these 3 doctors to speak. All of them became Christians first, and then they became medical doctors. So these are committed brethren who are still faithful Christians. We have a crisis in the world, a crisis. 4.5 million people have died in this crisis. In Jamaica, 1,700 people have died because of this crisis. And it is truth that is going to help us in the same way that truth spiritually, the Bible, helps us in dealing with the issue of salvation. It is truth who's going to help us in dealing with the matter of surviving this COVID-19 crisis. I just want to say just quickly, flu and COVID-19 are two different things in the sense that 55,000 people died from the flu in the United States last year, roughly 50,000. Man, 600,000 have died in the last 17 months from COVID-19. It's far, COVID-19 is far more dangerous, and we need to respond appropriately. In the same way that we accept social distancing, we accept wearing the mask, we accept sanitizing, right? We accept the diet, watch what you eat, in the same way that the same medical fraternity that says these things are important are also saying that the vaccine is important to this pandemic. And we want to thank these three doctors, and I know a vote of thanks will be said, but embrace truth, brethren, in order to survive this pandemic. God bless you.
Amen. So now we'll have our vote of thanks by Brother Desroy. Brother Desroy, are you here? Brother Desroy, over to you. We'll have our vote of thanks at this time.
Thank you so much, our able moderator and the entire team. At this time, it is my privilege to thank each and everyone, firstly, that turned up and turned out for this. At one point, I saw where it is that we had over 240 plus persons online, and the engagement has been such that we are still here after the time. It's a topical issue, and thank you so much to the organizers for getting it done. Also must thank Dr. Everett Watson, Dr. Jared Kidu, and Dr. Alva Kidu for presenting the information in such a way that it was easy for us to understand. Thank you for exercising the tenets or the characteristics of doctors being patient with your patients. Thank you so much for being there and just answering the question, putting it out there. Thank you so much for organizing and for preparing. We know that this preparation for this presentation wouldn't have started today, but the time that you took, we are truly appreciative of it. We recognize that we are in need of information, but more important for action. And so we appreciate it, and we trust that you will continue to organize sessions like these. We must also thank the technical team. You would have seen the presentation, you would have seen the Zoom being set up, but it took a team of persons behind the scene to get it done. And for that, we are truly grateful to you for even the flyer, for sending it out, for creating it. We are truly thankful for all it is that you do behind the scenes, my able moderator, the host, and all those who are behind. I know Angel was instrumental as well as the support team. Thank you so much for that. I trust that I have not left anybody out, but thank you all for staying with us, and we now move to our prayer.
I want to thank Brother Derek Brown, who's one of the main organizers of this, Brother Derek Brown from the Pembroke congregation. Well done, Brother Brown.
Thank you so much, Brother Brown. Thank you so much, Brother Kedu, for catching me up with that one.
Sorry, can I say this quickly, please? Just a correction in something that was said. 99.1% of the hospital COVID admissions are unvaccinated. 99.1% of the COVID admissions are unvaccinated. All right, majority of the COVID deaths are unvaccinated. All right, so I just want to make that clear. It's 99.1% of the persons who are hospitalized because of COVID are unvaccinated. All right.
All right, so now we'll have our closing prayer by Brother Roy Granu. Over to you, sir.
Eternal God who art in heaven, to you belong honor and glory. You are God, greatly to be praised. You spoke, and in 6 days the world was created. We owe everything to you, God. You allow this virus to be with us for a purpose, reasons we may never understand. But, oh God, we know that you are in control. And by your own power and by your own wisdom, one day the virus might be no more. We come to you seeking your divine intervention, asking you, God, for your grace and for your mercies to be upon us. Give our people, the medical personnel, oh God, wisdom, knowledge, and perfect understanding that they can work, develop vaccines, produce medicines, and other things, of God, to help. We pray, O God, as people, we will be obedient, we will exercise patience, and, O God, we will follow the laws of the land and follow the protocols that are put in place. Help us, O God, to set the example as your people, that the world is looking at us as a church, that, oh God, the things we do, the things we say, can either draw people to you or turn them away from you, oh God. We thank you for the men and the women who provided, oh God, us with useful information, who gave up their time and to be with us tonight to educate and to answer questions. Thank you, God, for the church that we are part of. Thank you for salvation. And thank you, God, for all that you have done and will continue to do. We put everything into your hands. And thank you, God, for this forum, that we can use Zoom and that we can come from different parts of the world, oh God, to be informed and to be encouraged. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Amen. Good to see Brother Bertram draw on and Brother Granu.
Yes, thank you, my
Amen.
sister.
Amen. Amen.
Pleasure
Amen.
being there.
Amen.
All right. Thanks everyone who took the time out to be here with us. I know that a lot of persons that it was a very informative session and they really do enjoy it. So remember our marriage seminar under the theme, The Sanctity of Marriage. That will be the 7th of November to the 14th, if I'm seeing correct. The 7th to the 14th, there are some very dynamic speakers who will be there. So the 7th of November to the 14th, 7 p.m. nightly, as you can see on the screen. And I hope you all can come out and be a part of this, whether you have been married for many years, not married as yet, and for those who are considering to be married, that these speakers will hit some nerves, step on a couple toes, but the message will get across in a very simple and a very profound way that I know that you all will understand and enjoy. So enjoy the rest of your day, and it was nice being your moderator for this evening.
Okay, bye everyone. God be with you all.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night. Good night.
Just for those who would like a copy of this recording, it will be available on the YouTube channel, Simple Christians. That's Simple Christians. As soon as it is loaded, you can go to Simple Christians and you will see that is Simple Christians. My admins, Brother Rowan, can you just drop that the correct link in the chat for those who would like to view it online? It will be available at Simple Christians. Is that right, Brother Rowan? You can drop it in, our Brother Engel can drop that in the chat for me, please. So those who want to rewatch the
Simply.
entire Simply. Yes.
JA,
Brother Rowan.
Simply Christians, JA.
Okay, there you
Can
go.
start
Brother
the
Deja,
recording now, right?
yes, so there it is. So someone would drop it. There it is in the chat.